Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it's July 18th, Monday, July 18th. This will be our chart lesson for the day. And we're looking at the daily chart here with envelope bands on it. And you can see just what we've been talking about, that prices were most likely trying to work back to this trend line. And for the most part, they worked sideways to down, but they got back here, and you can see they turned down right off that trend line and appear to be headed lower. We still could get a break here. We still could get a break of this trend line. I just don't know. Reading the chart, it looks like we're going lower. So, I mean, that's why we don't argue with the chart. That's the same reason I said, even though it felt like prices were still trying to go higher all through here, that most likely we're headed back to this trend line, and when we do, we'll turn down off of it. And so far, that's exactly what's happened. So, don't argue with the price action. As of now, we did close well off the lows, but you can see there's prices are still reacting to this somewhat of a channel here, range here rather, not channel. Obviously, they reacted to the channel, the trend line coming down, but they still seem to be reacting to the pink sideways range here as well. You can see we closed right at that midline. There's a midline right through here, and you can see we've been working both sides of that across there. And right now we're trading below it. My guess is we're going to trend down, at least test these lows again. If we bounce there, maybe we get a break. I mean, we could just keep going sideways here and end up getting a break that way. We could still make another leg up like this before we make a retest of the low. Still a lot of ways it could go, but the rules tell us that we're going to turn down off this trend line. That's where we're headed. And if price action, if the trend line still, if this downward trend is still in play, we're going to turn down. And that's what, so far, that's what's happened. We've turned down. You can see it real clear there. So, and we could have predicted this line way back. I mean, we wouldn't have known exactly where, but we could have predicted as soon as we came off this low that we're probably headed back to here. Now, the key is we don't know exactly where we're going to make contact, but you can see where we did, we've turned down. And that's exactly what you would expect. So, perfect price action so far. Let's flip over to the 2,000 tick intraday chart, and we'll go through the trades and talk about them and wrap the day up. Okay, a lot of movement here, so I had to back out considerably on this chart. I had to back out considerably on this chart to get it all in here. And this is common. Notice we got the downward channel. It's fairly flat. We get the break, we're moving to a new low, and we just kind of go into this steeper channel. But then this one's a little bit too flat. This one's a little bit too steep. And then we kind of angle over into this last blue channel, and it's more of a 45-degree angle. So a little more healthy. It may even be a little steep too, but the sell-off just kind of accelerated. And what happened was we turned down off of that trend line right in here somewhere on that daily chart, and prices took off. So there's a look at it. One thing I would show you, I started off, and early on, this trend line is obviously valid here, but we could never get it to really fit right on this side. It just, prices wouldn't come back there really, and even when they did, they went right on through. But you can see the midlines working really well there. But what ends up happening is that trend line is correct, but the other side of the range is way down here. And if you continue that out, you can see we came through the midline. We tested it on both sides a few times before we end up going lower. So this doesn't really help you in the end, because by the time we get down here, it's already after 2:30. So really, I think you were better off to play this channel and then just play what I have here, the shorter term stuff in between it. But I did want to show you that bigger channel just so you can see how the price action works and what you can find and how you can find those other options like that. So anyway, let's zoom in here and go through. There's not a lot of trades today. Most of the trading was early on, the good trades. So we'll go through the trades, and then we'll wrap this day up. It won't take too long. But 7 o'clock came pretty much right in here, And notice that we tried to go higher here and failed, but notice there's a new low, and so you get a first entry, then you get a second entry. There's a little bit of congestion here, and this is an engulfing bar. You'd want to wait till this closes, and we're probably going to make a new low here, and this is a trap. We're really expecting prices to go higher here. There's no setup to get long, but when it breaks higher and fails, you're probably going to get a trap, and you can see how quickly that drops down. And you really end up getting a couple of legs down here, probably a little more than a couple of legs. You can see that right there. So the bottom just kind of falls out of there. So that's a long trap. I marked it in green. Um, there's some reasons to be a little concerned. First of all, it's an engulfing bar, and so I'd be a little bit leery of trading it, getting in, break. I'm not even sure which way this thing broke first. I actually think it broke lower and then went up and then turned back down. And so that would be even more of a reason just to sit tight. But when it closes this bearish, maybe you go short there, but then you got a double bottom here. I think there's still enough room to get out between here and here. But it's something to be concerned about. So I marked it green. I'm not crazy about that trade with the congestion and the engulfing bar and the support. Although we would expect prices to maybe make a new low here, because we've already had a break of this one and a new high. So you're somewhat looking for a possible reversal here versus going higher. I will say this too. Now, that's not a super convincing close outside of that trend channel, and maybe I drew it a little too steep, and maybe it's more like that, and there's no break at all, and we're still looking for the high. So this one's just a little hard to read here. So I still like it better here because that's the way I'm going to draw it in most cases. And I really like it almost steeper like that, but definitely like so. And then so that's really not a convincing close outside. So we may still be looking for a new long. So it's just a little convoluted here, and it's hard to know what prices are doing here. So even though I marked that green, just because it's a trap, I'd be real careful with that trade right there. I'm not. It's not one of my favorite trades, but it's just something to watch. So, but prices drop on down here. We bounce and we start kind of working higher. You don't get a reversal here, and even here you're kind of working sideways, but you can clearly see that trend line working up. And here you get a first entry, second entry. I like this trade. This is close to being green because it is definitely a little bit congested. But you really have a triple test there too, because we tried to come back once, twice, three times. There's enough reason there that I like that trade. But if you felt it was a little congested, you wouldn't be wrong by skipping that trade. So, but you can see they trapped the shorts there. Look how it rockets up real quick, and it doesn't go much further before we come back and we actually test that yet again. There is another second entry, but the signal bar is not good enough there. And you really need to wait on a close and a new low here to see what's going on with this one. But we are expecting a new high off of this channel. And you can see if you just wait a few minutes, it's not long before you get it. And then we're going lower again. And in the bigger picture, we're going lower. It was hard to know that at that point because we didn't really have this trend line confirmed, but you can clearly see the EMA is kind of flat here. So this is a little bit range-like. You just have to kind of play these shorter term channels. But notice that we run up here, pull back, and you get a higher low here and a second entry. Notice that new swing high, first entry, second entry. So I like, and it's above the EMA there. I like going long there. Runs on up. There's a reversal here or a failure here, but it's not one you want to trade. Runs on up. We get a close, two legs to a new high, and I like taking that one to the short. It's a little bit aggressive. It's a triple test. There's also a first entry, second entry, and it confirms that we really confirmed that trend line here, but there's not you can't go short there yet. It's too early. But now that you got the new high with two legs up and a triple test and all that, it's still a little congested. We're still above the EMA, so maybe you wait on the lower high or a failure or whatever, and that comes here, and then you get a failure here. The only problem with this failure is it didn't get back to even the trend line, much less the EMA, so it feels a little early to look for a failure, but it's also a second entry, so um, you could almost argue for that to be red, even though it didn't get back to the EMA or the trend line. So because it's a failed second entry long and it's a second entry short. So a few reasons to like that one. You don't necessarily have this trend line confirmed, but it comes back here and you get another second entry here, but it's just too sideways and too much support right there. I mean, you got to go short right into that support. You can see it doesn't end up that it doesn't matter, but I'm a little leery of taking that trade, especially now that you know the midline's there, because it could bounce. I mean, we bounced there once, we've tried to bounce again, and we just can't get through it. So you don't know for sure you're not going to bounce there. So I don't think you want to take that short. And of course, we quickly get the break, and then we're trending higher. Um, there's another failure here, but you don't have a break of this trend line, and yet, so there's a good chance we're still headed higher, but you do end up getting a break, and then you make a new high. You don't actually make a new high on the channel, but you looks like you get a little bit of an overshoot here too, and so I think that's probably what ends up happening. Although we do end up going and making a new high, so it's another one of those that's so close that if you could change your trend line ever so slightly and probably still make it work, then there wouldn't be a close outside. So it has to be a convincing close outside. And we don't get that. We just kind of work down and then we're working up. But notice you make that high, you try to go higher once, twice. Now that's a failure. I like going short there. You'll probably just get a scalp out of it if nothing else. And maybe it turns on down because we just came off the high and we still haven't got down to the low. So I think prices are trying to fight that out. We should be going lower, but we're not. We're just kind of working sideways there. But we do drop on down. We test that midline again, and lo and behold, we bounce again. And there is a second entry right here, but it's not a very good signal bar. Very bearish, so I don't like going long there. And it's still congested across there too. But now we have a new high on this green channel, and you can see we keep trying to go higher, but and on this channel you even have a break in new high, and then you try to go higher once, twice, and it fails. So there's a failed second entry right there. Normally you want this to be on the other side of the EMA, but that's the first break of this big blue channel, and so there's a good chance prices could be turning down to make a new low. So maybe you take that trade. It's not the worst trade. I think there are better trades though. So, but I marked it. I figured somebody would ask about it. If you took it and you understand what's going on there, I'd probably say it's okay. It's not the best setup. And then we're dropping down finally, and you get a first entry, and you actually get a second entry on this engulfing bar. And you might consider going short here, but I just think you're better off to wait. It turns out to be a good trade, and then but it's looking congested, and you can see we didn't really take off. It just kind of keeps going sideways before it finally does drop down and make a new low, and then it comes back. I marked this one. It's such a bearish bar, but notice your new high. You try to go higher once, twice. It's not a perfect. It's not a perfect failed second entry short, but it is. I mean, we tried to go higher twice and it fails, and you can almost look at that as a triple test across there. And it's such a bearish bar right at the EMA. I like taking that one just to try to get a scalp, and you don't know that it's going to end up doing what it does here. But if you take that one, maybe you get a runner, and maybe you get to ride some of this out here. And but it's kind of a little spike in channel short term. And again, we're trying to go lower, but you just can't go short down here at this lower trend line, because at that point, that's where we think the lower trend line is. And this could be an overshoot. You don't want to go long, but you got to be real careful going short. And this thing just keeps going. We drop down, and I don't see anything to buy or sell here. We finally get a break of this yellow channel. And unfortunately, we only get a first entry, and it just bottom drops. Then you get another first entry, and then we're breaking again. And the only reason I marked this one, this thing has moved a little bit, but there was a channel working across here. Let me adjust this. Somehow this has moved a little bit. Just like that. But it confirms that channel. And you could look at it as a break out of this congestion. It comes back up. The real problem is it's still inside this green channel, trend channel. And there's a chance it breaks lower and comes back, makes a new high. I marked it green, but I still think you can find better trades than that. This thing just drops on down, kind of works sideways, and I don't see any other opportunity really in here into the close. There's just nothing that excites me. You don't want to be going long or short here really. Maybe you treat this like a failed breakout, but it's just a first entry on an engulfing bar. You get a lower high here, and then you got 2 bar matching lows. Always be careful of those, because you see what happens when it breaks lower right there. It traps everybody real quickly and comes higher. And I just don't see anything else. It was a really slow afternoon. I mean, really, after about lunchtime, there's just not much here. And the sad thing is it's a really nice downtrend, but there's just not really that many setups. And right in here is starting to look like a strong move down, which kind of changes your thinking about how good the setup has to be. But this last little bit was not that strong. You were having some nice rallies. And what this is people are taking advantage of a few long opportunities trying to catch a bottom. And there's a bunch of people jump in there. And then once it rallies a little bit, the sellers overtake it again. And that's where you got to be really careful. You don't want to be trying to pick any bottoms in that kind of deal, because it will come back to haunt you. So anyway, that's the way I saw it today. No, like I said, not much after about lunchtime. And you could probably argue for a couple more of these to be green. I'd stay away from them. I don't see anything in there that late in the day that would interest me personally, but there might be a couple of ones you could argue for green. But anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.